Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't missing my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues. Guess if you ain't at the table, you on the menu. And I'm that spitter, baby. They don't want you to see, but everybody's south of Capitol Hill's rocking with me. Boys smoke the trays and ponder getting their life together. I'm comfortable with my role, so I'm like, whatever. Me? I ain't got a job, but I work hard. And you don't work hard, but you got a job. The irony is I'm judged while you feel the applause. I'm slept on, that's why I had to set this alarm. My dudes is armed, I'm armed with this arm charm. Body banging like she got that cream from Barry Bonds. Yeah.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
That Dre season is here, a real hitter with a mic, I'm everything that they fear. With that hood ain't the same, I was all on their ass, I'm level-headed. So yo, my dudes love when I spaz, and I'm so over Seattle's passive-aggressive attitude. They don't call you back, what they really saying is F you. While I'm from the same place, I move at a different pace. I prefer if you just said it to my face, damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it
I hate
for
these
us.
average dudes with they average spit, writing average rhymes, knocking average chicks. The closer I get, I can feel the people starting to shift. I'm loyal to a fault, and everybody can't come with. Rap's a rich man's game, I'm only playing with change. They bang models and singers, I'm knocking my own flame, I'm different. The crowd, I move with the chosen few. Black thoughts, I could be the front man for the roots. No diamonds and gold, I'm on my sticks and stones. If we can see your panty line, you should have on a thong. My team is strong, through this fire we forged a bond. And they already know what it is when I get on. To the hearse, party like it's December 31st. When I'm on my deathbed, I probably cracking my nurse. You ain't got the bars to compete. I'm a verbal athlete, deflating these boys so they say that I cheat. Damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Yeah. I should probably start by apologizing for the long wait, man. You know, I know I be tripping. But I'm not just a rapper, I'm an artist. And, you know, my creative process is a little bit different than most. Nonetheless, I want to welcome everybody out to the Dre's Experience. I got TCF in the building. My whole camp's here with me. I got the band in here laying this cool-ass vibe. And I'm Seattle's own. Let's get into it.
Hi, everybody. Happy Friday Eve. Welcome to the Morning Update Show. I'm your co-host, Trey Holiday. And we got a pretty busy schedule today on the docket. I got to bring my guy in here. What up, big O? Happy Thursday, man.
All right. Yeah. Happy Thursday. Definitely a big, interesting news day for us, at least over here at Converge Media. We're going to get right into it. Chief Diaz decision to overturn OPA's finding on this pink umbrella, the tear gas up there on Capitol Hill. Before I get into it, right now, it was a big show today. Tag and share this stream right here. Go ahead and tag and share the stream with people who you feel could appreciate culturally relevant news and information emanating from right here in the Emerald City. Today, today we're also joined by Erica C. Barnett. She's going to talk about some of the latest developments here in homelessness and housing in Seattle and King County. Also joined by David Obelcz from Malcontent News. He's talking about some funny business over there in Kirkland. Businesses being harassed for their support of Black Lives Matter. But man, let me hurry up and run down these quick points here real quick so we can jump right into this today. First of all, again, want to give a big shout out to KBCS 91.3 over in Bellevue College. They carry a lot of audio that you hear here on the Morning Update Show on their different shows. Also, if you're you can listen to the Morning Update Show anywhere that you listen to podcasts, at SoundCloud, iTunes, Google, Spotify. You can just put in Converge Media Network there, and wherever you look for your podcast. Also, a reminder, as usual, no appointments required for vaccinations here in Seattle. Excuse me, no appointments are required. If you need a vaccination, go pop up over there and go get that jab. Yesterday, at 5 p.m., Chief Diaz put something out on the SPD blotter and basically said that he's overturning, overruling, whatever technical term is, the finding that that Director Meyerberg from OPA found. A lot of people know Pink Umbrella. That was June 1st up there on Capitol Hill. Peaceful protest. I was on a protest, and they were coming up Pine Street. And wanted to march past the precinct. The Seattle Police Department came out with barricades, originally with bike officers, which were replaced by, we got a video to show it. But anyway, long story short, the tear gas came out and OPA found, sustained the case against the officer for giving the order to release the tear gas. And Chief Diaz yesterday overturned that.
Wow. I mean, this is something that I know we're going to be diving into today, because that Pink Umbrella video, I think that was the thing that allowed people to understand what was really going on in Capitol Hill before it was even the chop at that point. And honestly, that was like the jumping off point. So to hear this, there is very disheartening.
You got to remember too, the Chads and the chop only formed because the Seattle Police Department, for reasons best known to them, because we still don't know. And this is something we'll talk about after the video here, but it's like there's nothing stopping the Seattle Police Department from saying this is the person who gave the order. Why they have to be investigated by OPA instead of them just saying this? That's why people don't have confidence when now Chief Diaz has said, hey, this officer is not responsible. There's somebody else in the ecosystem was responsible. Anyways, man, for our longtime viewers, I hate to do this to you because I know that it's always it's triggering and traumatizing, not only to you, but to us here. And I apologize to my colleagues here in the studio, some of them who actually went through this with us. But I think that it's important here. It's an extended clip, 5 minutes. It's an extended clip here from June 1st of 2020. And this is a few minutes leading up to the flashpoint, as well as when the gas was deployed, as well as about a minute or so after the gas was deployed up on Capitol Hill.
We're right here at the East Precinct. It doesn't get any closer than this right now. That's the barricade. Again, if we see the bike officers here, if we see the bike officers tapped out, then people should be concerned. As long as the bike officers are in front, I think that we're okay. You know, they have a reinforcement behind them. But we've seen here the last 4 days, what we've seen the last 4 days is and there it is, they're getting tapped out. They're getting tapped out right there. We have a definite change in posture. We have a definite change in posture right here at the East Precinct. And what I just told you right there is when a bicycle officer gets tapped out by an officer with a gas mask, they've changed their posture and position here at the East Precinct. What we could expect next is tear gas. Why tear gas and possibly flashbangs? Why we say that is, and now they done brought out the troopers. And I'm gonna tell you something, the troopers ain't got no problem firing. These guys, the troopers ain't got no issue letting loose. We saw the troopers on Saturday. Now this situation is escalating. If you know anybody, if you know, tag and share this stream. This is right now live at East Precinct. The officers have changed their posture. This gentleman right here grabbed the barricade, and now you see they're reinforcing the barricade. We have not heard an audible anything from an authority here. The umbrellas are out. We're getting pushed back. Don't spray that shit. Don't spray it. Don't spray it. Okay, the umbrellas are here. You see people put out the umbrellas to block the spray. To block the spray. It's rowdy right here. Hold on. Let me bring it down. Let's just try to de-escalate. Let's try to de-escalate this. Let's just try to bring this down, guys. You know, it's a lot of worse shit than going to jail, like a flashbang, shrapnel, or something. Let's bring this down. Let's bring this shit down. So we see him grabbing the umbrella. There's the spray. There's the spray. There's the spray. It's on now. It's on. East Precinct. They're losing control. State police are trying to open the barricade. They're putting the pepper spray in the air. Share this stream. Share this stream. Tag and share this stream. Share this stream. This, goddamn it, they got me, you motherfuckers. I'm gonna eat this shit though. It's a crush. I got pepper spray all over me. They're not moving. I got sprayed, but shit, I've been through worse. Barricade is up. The officers are coming with the spray. And this is exactly what's happened here. Get the fuck out my way. Let's see here. This is what's going on. I only got one eye. These are flashbangs. This is flashbangs that they're employing. Hey, bring this shit down. Bring it down. Share this stream. God damn it. It's the tear gas. It's the fucking tear gas. Police, stop. Holy shit. Tear gas is everywhere. Holy shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. We've been gassed. Holy shit. Oh my God. Those motherfuckers. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh my God. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh my God. These fuckers. Medic! Medic!
So that was June 1st, 2020, and you see it, and I let this play there. And people need to understand. And some people are like, oh well, the protesters got tear gas. If that wasn't bad enough, you see a whole neighborhood, that smoke went on and on and on. That gas over there, on and on and on. And what I get from Chief Diaz's statement is that the officer that OPA held accountable, Chief Diaz, is now saying like, well, it's actually probably infrastructure above that officer. But I'm just like, if you taking this guy off the sword, who you making accountable for this? And at the end of the day, I mean, the buck stops with the chief, who at the time was Chief Best, who's no longer with the police force. Is anybody gonna be held accountable for tear gassing a whole neighborhood? Let's be clear, protesters weren't tear gas. A whole neighborhood that had protesters in it was tear gas. And the impacts of that went on for blocks and blocks. People lived in those apartments, people up there in different offices. People's kids were sitting up there at home. They're breathing in tear gas. And right now, because at this moment, no one is accountable. And I think it would be much different if Chief Diaz was like, well, this one particular officer isn't accountable, but this is the one who is. But that's not what we're getting.
Yeah, and it does go more and more into why people do not have the trust around, not just the police force, but these accountability offices that are supposed to really hold folks accountable. It's unfortunate that they weren't able to really push through. And we talked about this with Director Meyerberg, that, they have a limited ability to, they give these recommendations basically that then have to be picked up. And so for Chief Diaz to, now try to pin it off on someone else. At the end of the day, you're right. Oh, what's needed in this time is full transparency, not these kind of performative actions that make it seem like actually it's not them, it's something else. But then that something else is super ambiguous. I don't understand any of this.
Here's what the people in the fair Emerald City need to remember. There's absolutely nothing that's stopping the Seattle Police Department from coming out and saying this is what it was. So like the whole point that Meyerberg has to go through all of this, first of all, I mean, let's go back to who gave the order to evacuate the East Precinct. Like that's being investigated instead of the Seattle Police Department saying, hey, this is what happened. We've got to go through all of these things here. And this is why I said last night on Twitter is like, what confidence do the people here in Seattle have that we'll ever get an answer when it's almost 1 year later and we still don't have an answer as to who gave the order to vacate the East Precinct, which, let's be clear, you know, we were sitting out there. We got the footage. Wasn't no protesters sitting there trying to take the East Precinct. They talk about the East Precinct what was under attack. What people don't realize, though, is you see this footage here from the Western Barricade. A good part of every day, that street was open until a certain hour, you know? So if it was like, right, Jake? Yeah, so like, they've painted this picture like the East Precinct was under assault. It was this and that. A good portion, because the night shift would come and be out there till 2 a.m. playing their music or whatever, 3 a.m. They go to bed. Pine Street would open. And then later on in the day, they would close Pine Street. That's not the actions of a precinct that's under attack. No. You get what I'm saying? No one asked the SPD to leave the East Precinct. No one asked them to abandon their precinct. They abandoned their own precinct, which then led to this vacuum of Chaz and Chop. And we can't get any direct accountability. We got to go to Meyerberg because no one over in the SPD is just standing up saying, yeah, it was me. I did it. What?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, this is exactly why people do not believe in it, because when you are not being transparent, unfortunately, what people think is that you're hiding something, period, point blank. When you can't come out and say exactly what it is, exactly what it was, then everybody is sitting there thinking, you know what? You guys were up to no good. That's at the end of the day, y'all did something that was funny. You probably did something that was against some regulation. And that's why you guys are not just saying what it is. And at this point, I think that so many people, as Omari stated, it wasn't just the protesters that had to eat that tear gas. There's a lot of families and business owners that deserve your transparency at this point, and that actually deserve accountability towards, man, who made the order? Who said that it was okay to spray this entire neighborhood when there was really nothing going on but a peaceful action? You can see it right there in the video that the officer was the one who was the most aggressive to even grab the pink umbrella.
Well, SPD lied.
You weren't seeing people go after the police.
Exactly. And they put out a statement, which all the media ran with, backing that false narrative, saying that the protesters had sparked off a riot. And we see all the way. I mean, the thing is, too, what's unfortunate about this is everybody from OPA to national professionals. The New York Times took that footage, that same pink umbrella footage, and they did a big analysis on it. And everybody talks about, one, just that change of posture. I called it out. I said, as long as the bicycle cops are here, man, you know, everything is everything. But if these guys get tapped out by the officers in the gas masks, we had to change the posture. And it's exactly what happened and exactly escalated the situation. I mean, Chief Diaz has his reasoning, and he tried to speak to his reasoning, basically saying, like, you know, it was a bigger chain of command issue as opposed to this one officer. But then, I mean, man, you know, well, as we like to say here, man, just tell the whole story.
Yeah,
that's what I would propose to the Seattle Police Department. Why you making Meyerberg do all this? Tell the whole story. You guys should, man, because you can't say that you want closure with this city. You can't say that you want this city to heal. You can't say that you want this city to move forward if you're not willing to be 100% transparent. Why can't you guys just come forward and tell us what happened? These are people who are professionals that getting confessions. Just confess. Why are you putting our city through this? So, okay, if named officer one isn't the person who's accountable and responsible, man, who's responsible? Why we got to go through all of this to find out who gave the order? Why aren't you guys being transparent?
This is what I'm saying. You know, when we talk about the goals of collective voice and people really utilizing their First Amendment right, clearly it is this kind of action that makes us go, why would we believe in what you guys have going on in that department when we have an opportunity right here, Chief Diaz taking over for, you know, Chief Carmen Best to come in and actually usher in another way of doing business where you're reaching out and where you're building the relationship and where you're being transparent. Everybody in the city really has the need for accountability from your office. And ultimately, the thing for me, it goes back to, you know, like we said, if you guys want to talk about the protesters who were like, okay, they're out there and they're being peaceful, yet, you know, this opportunity for them to be have gas thrown at them, have flashbangs thrown at them, that's really because you're trying to control an unruly crowd. What we saw there was nothing of the sort. And
Washington,
so for me,
D.C. was unruly.
Yeah, for me, it just goes back to, what we saw January 6th was unruly. That right there was not unruly. They were sitting there, they were talking, they were telling the police what they want to say. That is a First Amendment right that we all have. So ultimately, that's why I'm like, how can we get away with these kind of narratives when it's just not the truth? And I always say you have an opportunity to lead, an opportunity to do business different. But right now, what we're seeing is the status quo. Oh, this is why I'm not surprised by this. It's unfortunate.
It's a step backwards. And, you know, because at this point, if it wasn't that commander on the scene commander who told him to unleash the gas, they're saying he's not accountable. Then basically you're saying Chief Best's accountable, and Chief Best ain't even here no more. So then who's accountable for what? Yeah. Who's accountable, you know, for anything? I understand Chief Diaz's intentions. You know what I'm saying? We've known Chief Diaz a long time, done a lot of work in the community, especially around gun violence and working in everything else. I know Chief Diaz, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, for him, however he sees this, you know what I'm saying? I'm sure he sincerely sees it like that. But I disagree with this decision, you know, 100%, because they're not saying who is accountable. It would be one thing to take this officer off the hook, but they're not saying who is accountable. And as we close in on 1 year from that very date, from June 1st, you know, we're going in 1 year later, and the city of Seattle still doesn't have answers. And people need to remember, it wasn't just June 1st where the tear gas came out. I believe it came out June 1st, June 2nd, and June 3rd. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that neighborhood was tear gas. The neighborhood, people, dogs, you know what I'm saying? Everybody up there was eating that tear gas. I really think that this is a big step backwards here in the city, especially going into such an emotional time for so many people. There was a lot of people who directly on the ground and even indirectly, people who watched this during live streams and everything else that was so impacted by what happened up there. And, you know, it just makes me question a lot, man.
Well, I'll say this too. You know, as you said it, you know, coming up on a year and we still don't have any answers, but also too, this really highlights so much of the bureaucracy, these levels of bureaucracy that is going to take to get to one answer. People are like, who was responsible for closing the East Precinct? No answers. Who's responsible and accountable for this tear gas? No answers. Here we are again in steeping it in a bunch of bureaucracy to pin it on one thing or another, one department, one level, whatever. But that kind of stuff is what gets really difficult for us regular citizens to follow. I've been saying it, man. It's a pinball. It's like it's just going ping, 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 ping all over the place. And yet there's no real accountability on the other side.
Yeah. And, you know, for Converge, I'll say this, is that it's almost been 1 year. Right. And in this 1 year, you know, we sat and we waited for the system to work. It's a lot of people who are on different lawsuits. They're suing this, suing that. You won't find our name on any lawsuit anywhere, although people have taken our footage in the federal court and in the state court and all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's in the public domain. So they just take our footage, they put it in these lawsuits. We haven't been in that. There was, you know, like the National Freedom Press Tracker came in there. You know what I'm saying? I told them, hey, video speaks for themselves. We're waiting to see. We're waiting to see. And then when the findings came out, and that was the one, I think it was only one sustained, was that finding. I'm like, okay, well, you know what I'm saying? It looks like at least something over here is working. Like we've sat here for a year and, you know, we haven't been inflammatory. We haven't been like, oh, whatever. I mean, we got footage people saw the streams. We got footage on all kinds of stuff that never made the streams. You know what I'm saying? And man, we've sat here at Converge, and man, we've given time. We've talked to the police on several different issues. You know, even beyond this issue, because there's a lot of other things happening in the city. You know what I'm saying? We've kept this open line of communication, in knowing that this is out there. And, you know, Meyerberg and them came back, they sustained it. And I mean, it's disappointing to see. And like I said, I understand if Chief Diaz is saying that this particular officer is not responsible. Okay. The problem that I have is just tell us who is.
Yeah, that's it. That's all people want to know. I mean, when we're talking about both of these issues, tell us who's responsible. And I think the people deserve it at the end of the day. That's what it's all about.
I talked to Meyerberg. Meyerberg put out a statement yesterday. Meyerberg is the director of OPA, the Office of Police Accountability. I talked to him late last night with some additional follow-up questions. And the first question was, do you feel this this decision weakens OPA in the view of the public, a public that already feels that OPA has no teeth? Put up OPA, slide 1. I expect that it will weaken the view of OPA for some. However, it's not a secret that OPA cannot itself impose discipline. If anything, this case is a good example of the limitation in practice and will provide community members insight into the way accountability system functions and perhaps how it should function in an ideal state. I asked Director Meyerberg a second question. Who are the people impacted supposed to hold accountable? People who were affected by this incident will need to seek accountability through other mechanisms, including the civil court system, the political process, and advocating for changes in policies and local laws. That's Director Meyerberg from the Office of Police Accountability.
Well, this right here is exactly why there are so many people. And, you know, this, I say it all the time, see yourself as a part of the solution, particularly for those of you who were really impacted by this incident and by the days of tear gas that you may have experienced in your neighborhood, whether you're a protester, a homeowner, a family, a business owner, a resident. Ultimately, you have the opportunity right now to really utilize your voices in terms of creating new legislation and policy. It is very clear here that that unfortunately we're not seeing the accountability come from the right side. It's going to take collective voice and action. This is why really bringing people together and the protest movement that we all experienced right here last summer is still alive and well in so many different ways. It's not just a moment of time. It's been transitioned into a movement. And this is why I'm always saying, find yourself as a part of it, because it's going to take all of us. It's very clear that the only way that we're really going to see any kind of accountability or any change is by us utilizing our voices and really being a part of the process. It's unfortunate that it comes down to us.
And I would say this before we go to break, and we're going to come back with Erica C. Barnett. Man, this is a good opportunity for the Seattle Police Department. If this officer is not responsible, this is a great opportunity for you to just tell the citizen stakeholders of the Emerald City who is. This is also a great opportunity as we close in on June 8th, which would have been 1 year since the Seattle Police Department abandoned their own precinct. Just tell us, why are we going through all of this? You guys know. I mean, just tell us. You can't say that you want healing in this city. You can't say that you want this city to move forward. You can't say that you want the citizens to trust the police if you just don't tell the whole story, man. Let's get it all out there. You know, there's absolutely no way to move forward without that happening. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back on the other side, we're joined by Erica C. Barnett of publicola.com. You are watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. And this conversation here is one that is going to continue. But in the interim here, we've got Erica C. Barnett from publicola.com. Why don't you bring in Erica, all you? Erica.
Hello, hello.
There you go. Good morning.
And a little audio issue here.
So real quick before we jump in to these homeless issues, which we wanted to discuss with you, any thoughts on the big news this morning?
I'm sorry. Can you be specific on the big news?
Chief, Chief, they sustained a finding against the officer who ordered the tear gas there on June 1st, and Chief Diaz overturned Director Meyerberg's finding.
Well, I am not. I apologize. My reporter Paul Kiefer would be a great source for you on this. But I'm gonna defer to him next time you have him on to talk about that. And I apologize that I am not prepped to talk about that issue with you this morning.
No problem. Don't believe me. It's not going anywhere.
Right. For sure. Yeah.
The issue is not going anywhere. All right. So two things we want to talk to you about here first, and the first one is the county has bought a property, a hotel up there on Queen Anne. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, this hotel has been serving as a homeless shelter run by Catholic Community Services since the beginning of the pandemic, and so they've purchased it with this new sales tax for health. It's called Health Through Housing, and I actually just talked to the county executive this morning about that and a bunch of other stuff. But one thing that I think is really interesting about this purchase is that the county, unlike the city, has really invested in this idea of putting people in places where they have a door that locks, where they have their own bathroom, where they have privacy, as opposed to what the city has been doing, which is more, and we'll talk about this too, but it is more putting people back into the same old shelter situations they were in before, and moving back to congregate shelters. So the county's gonna be purchasing more hotels to sort of put people in long term, so they can get on their feet, so they can transition into actual housing. It's the beginning of, I think, what's going to be a lot of these kind of purchases for the county that really distinguishes them from the city of Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting, Erica. And, I know there's been a lot of different groups. We have Compassion Seattle who was talking about this and just kind of shelter. What do you see in terms of some of the next wave happening as they maybe are trying to transition from that traditional shelter stuff to really creating this kind of more privatized situation for those who are unhoused?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of tension because, as we're going towards a regional approach to homelessness, quote unquote, although that's happening really, really slowly. So I think there's going to continue to be tension between the existing shelters, which of course are like a lot cheaper. You've got the navigation center. The city wants to start sort of putting people back in there in, denser and more crowded circumstances. And then you've got the county kind of moving towards this more hotel-based situation. I mean, I think it kind of depends. Like, is there going to be a resurgence of tourism anytime in the next year or two, where hotels are going to want to keep their properties, or to not lease them? And so, buying hotels, I think, and making them kind of a permanent part of the homelessness kind of ecosystem is a way to ensure that those properties, like the ones that the city is running, which are just leased, don't just fall back into private hands and end up being hotels again, but be kind of more permanent solutions.
Now, if this Compassionate Seattle charter passes, and part of that is that the city has to provide 2,000, I guess, beds, if that's what it is. Do you think that the city might look at these kind of solutions as opposed to leasing hotels and things like that, buying properties?
I mean, I think that if you're requiring the city to do in 1 year what it hasn't been able to do through the whole pandemic and through the whole, administration and the administration before that, what they're going to do is the cheapest possible option, which is going to be like navigation center style enhanced shelters as opposed to hotels, just because they've got, if they actually are able to do this, which, the charter amendment doesn't have any real enforcement mechanism. So if, my guess is that they're not going to be able to do it if it passes. But if they do, it's going to be the cheapest thing that they can afford in that first year. So I don't think, and it all depends on who the new administration is, of course, after Durkin leaves office. But I don't see purchasing hotels because the charter amendment doesn't provide any money. And the reason the county was able to buy hotels is because they have this new sales tax that actually gives them access to new revenues. Whereas the charter amendment just says you have to go back to your existing well of money and find another, 50 million, 100 million, 150 million. And that's just it's not going to be enough money, most likely for them to actually buy a bunch of hotels and a bunch of new housing, because the amendment also says housing, but that just seems very unlikely to me.
Right. Now, we got another story for you here. And this was originally printed in publicola.com. Homeless outreach providers say new rules would put them at the city's beck and call. What's that all about?
The city has not signed its contracts with outreach providers this year. So these are the people that actually go out and talk to people living in encampments. And part of that is just because they don't have a lot of people working there anymore. There's been a real flood of people leaving the homelessness division. But part of it is that now the providers have gotten to look at these new contracts, and they say things like, they essentially say that they need to report all this new information to the city that they didn't have to report previously. And the beck and call is a reference to the fact that if the Hope team, which is kind of like the new navigation team, goes out to an encampment, decides it's priority, the providers essentially have to drop everything, go out there, even if it is not the population that they serve. So I talked to quite a few folks in the Native American provider community and outreach provider community. And what they told me was look, if we are being directed to go to these giant encampments, typically what happens is it's predominantly white people, and B, it's almost never our people, because they don't tend to feel comfortable at these giant encampments. They tend to be off on their own, and we have to really do outreach and do work and build relationships and trust with those folks. And so now, instead of doing that work, we are going to be directed, whenever there's an encampment sweep, to go to whatever the priority encampment is, whether it's in Ballard, whether it's in Broadview, whatever. And so their concern is that they're not being able to do their genuine, community-based work that they do, in that relationship building that's so important with getting people to actually, accept, quote unquote, things like shelter, things like services. And so I mean, the other problem is that from their point of view is that the Hope team controls about a quarter of the shelter beds. And so when they're out there and they, find somebody who needs a shelter bed, at one of these encampment sweeps, they have to go where the Hope team offers them a bed, and it may not be appropriate, it might be a congregate bed at the navigation center where somebody doesn't feel comfortable, or it might be, across town from where they work, or whatever it may be. So it's just a problem of a square peg in a round hole. And so they still haven't signed those contracts. They actually sent 7 providers sent a letter to the city late last month saying that they had some real issues with them and they weren't going to sign them unless there were some major changes made.
Are there any changes being anticipated around this? Like what's the way forward?
I think what is happening right now is that the Human Services Department is sort of waiting for them to blink. The problem with threatening to not sign your contract is then you don't get the money that you need to do your work. And a lot of these groups really rely heavily on the city. So I think right now both sides are kind of a little bit in an impasse. I think there could be some changes to the contracts, but I don't know that the city is feeling like they want to do a lot of major changes right now because they feel like, well, we have all the cards. And one of the things that was said in a meeting between HSD and the providers, I believe it was last week, was, look, this is the price of dealing with the city. If you want our money, you've got to abide by whatever conditions we set. And so that's kind of the tone of the discussions right now. So they're not in a great place right now as we speak today on Thursday. I mean, that could certainly change, and they could dial down the temperature a little bit, but right now it's not looking like either side is wanting to blink.
Erica, you cover so much of this information. And my question to you, as I'm just listening to you talk, it really sounds like a business negotiation, right? 2 corporate entities kind of battling against each other, checking each other's BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement where they're like, hey, the city's like, well, we got all the cards. You got to play by our rules. How can we change this? Because unfortunately, what's actually happening is that those who are unhoused are not getting the services that they need. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, it feels like they're not really a part of the understanding from maybe the city's perspective to understand why these guys need to build relationships in the ways that they have. But what do you kind of foresee in terms of kind of changing this environment? Because it really does seem unfortunate for those who are unhoused.
Well, I think one thing that would make a big difference is if, I mean, it's really weird that this stuff is still at the city when we are supposedly going to this regional approach. And, I don't know if we're going to still have a regional authority in 5 years or not. I don't know if that's going to work, but it's what we're supposedly doing. And there is at least on that authority some input from, and a little bit of power to people with lived experience of homelessness, which they, does not exist at the city. And so the first thing that I think would be helpful is probably moving some of the stuff into the new regional authority. So it's not like the city is trying to tightly control this one aspect, which I think goes back to the fact that the city had the navigation team, that they're the ones that have always removed encampments in the city. And so everything else is like supposedly moving out, and then we're going to keep the navigation team, we're going to keep encampment removals, and we're going to keep shelter referrals. And so I think that would help if that was sort of all, at least within this regional entity where it at least has some input from folks with lived experience. And then, I think that it's just going to depend on the new administration and whether they have sort of an understanding of not just like how contracts work and how to talk to the providers, but just why people become homeless, the fact that homelessness is a very multifaceted thing. And, people who are out there don't all need the same, level of services. A lot of people, may just need, transportation and help with rent. Other people, need culturally competent people actually going out and doing that outreach. And, a lot of times it starts with providing healthcare, and, you build a relationship that way. And so I think that the problem, there's a lot of problems, but one of the problems with the way that we deal with homelessness in this, in the city, in this region, is like, we think it's going to be easy. We think we just need to sort of slot people into shelter, and then, we can check them off the list. And obviously that's not how it works. And if you put people into shelter that's inappropriate, or, before you've built a relationship, it's not going to stick. Yeah. And so it's just it has become very much a data game and a numbers game. And I understand the need for data, because we have to see if things are working and see what works best. But it needs to also be a human thing. And it needs to be a situation where we ask people with lived experience, what do you need, or what did you need, or what did you wish you had when you were homeless? And I just feels like we don't do that nearly enough at the city level, because it does feel like, as you said, it feels a little like the providers, are one entity, and the city is one entity, and they're negotiating, and you kind of forget about the actual people.
Yeah, well, we know that feeling.
Absolutely.
Erica C. Barnett, publisher, publicola.com. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. And I know we'll be checking back in again with you very soon.
Thank you both.
Thanks, Erica.
Yeah, Erica stays on top of these homeless issues.
Well, absolutely. And I think it just right there, the discussion we just had really is an indicator of why so many folks that are coming from a relational approach are talking about this in terms of a holistic model. So she just kind of laid it out right there.
All right, we're going to take a quick merch break right now. When we come back, we have David Obelcz of Malcontent News. You're watching the Morning Update Show. Good way to support us here at Converge. Pick up some merch where weconverge.com/shop. And man, I think we're gonna make these no excuses. It seems like this is a no excuses season that we're rolling into. And you know what I'm saying? We haven't made the no excuses gear available. I think we're gonna have to make that available.
Yeah, absolutely. People want it. You already know. Oh, it's time to let these folks know. No excuses.
No excuses. All right. Oh, yeah, D'Alessandro, please bring in David Obelcz. There he is, the malcontent himself.
Good morning, Omari and Trey. How are you doing? And can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah, we hear you good. You look good.
Great
too.
audio.
Jeez.
David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you also. And also thank you for supporting independent media. I know we're all in a giant family. We're all in this together. But I want to thank you for having us on the show and for your support.
All right. So I'm talking to you about two things here today. One of them is Chief Diaz and OPA. But before we get to that, you can put up this overlay here. This is from Malcontent News, and it says, an order of coffee turns into a thinly veiled racial diatribe. And this actually looks like it's coming to us out of the city of Kirkland, man. What happened?
Yeah, so there's a coffee stand. They're located at 124th and 116th. They're at the 76 gas station there. That's a really major intersection in Kirkland. It's called Javalicious. They are a Black-owned, woman-owned business founded by two people that are veterans of the military, live in the local area. And they have some Black Lives Matter signs up around their coffee stand. About 10 days ago now, maybe 7 to 10 days ago, a man drove up, ordered a coffee, and then pointed at one of the signs and said, "Is that your sign?" And Taryn Kaysen is the co-owner of this. His wife doesn't want her name used because she was the victim of being accosted in this. And at first, she didn't even understand what sign he was talking about. And then when she figured it, she was like, "Yeah, that's our sign." And the person said to him, and I quote, and I know an F-bomb was dropped earlier in the show, Omari, so I'm going to go read it in its entirety. "I think you need to find out who Antonio Jr. is. Go look him up and fuck yourself." Took the coffee and drove off. She didn't even understand any of this because they're from the New York area originally. And Taryn feels if he had been in the stand, that this would have never happened. He actually wasn't in the stand because they have a newborn baby, their fourth child, and he was literally in the middle of taking care of his child when this incident happened. It's a lot more than a cup of coffee. It's this veiled racism and using the murder of Antonio Mays Jr., who was 16, who was shot in CHOP in this last major incident that happened in there on the 29th, from an individual, ironically, who says, go look up Antonio Jr., who doesn't even understand Antonio Jr.'s story or what happened on June 29th, which is a separate story in itself.
And I'll bring this up because, we find a lot of people throw Antonio Mays Jr.'s name and Lorenzo Anderson's Jr.'s name just out there. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, we're somebody who every month, last day of the month, we send that email over to SPD trying to figure out, anything that's going on with the investigation on the murder of Antonio Mays Jr. And yeah, that's something that we find that people do a lot. They use this young man's name just to, whoa, why don't you guys do this or do that? What about Antonio Mays? And it's like, why don't you actually care? You just using this young man's name. So what's the outcome with this here? I know that one of the main things is you want to raise awareness and also let people know that this is Kirkland. It's really right across the water.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that's interesting, Omari, because we focused on the east side a lot, if we were to look at communities on the east side and we're going to put them on a wokeness scale, and I'll be the first to say, I'm going to look right in the camera and say it, Seattle, you're nowhere near as woke as you thought. And that also applies to King County. And I've said that many times on the air. Kirkland is probably the most progressive, the most trying to do something community on the east side. And there still has a tremendous amount of work to do. What was interesting is when we published this story, it has actually become one of the most read stories we published. There is massive community outpouring of support for this stand. It appears that they've had it picked up in business, which really was our intent. But at the end of the day, a lot of that still is just performative. To just go and say, well, okay, I'm going to drive up, I'm going to make sure that I buy a cup of coffee on my commute, or if I'm in that neighborhood or stopping by the Fred Meyer that's nearby. That's great, but it's still not addressing the problem. And this history goes back a long time. A lot of people don't realize Washington was part of the Oregon Territory. In 1844, they said the Oregon Territory, no black settlers. Kirkland had 3 communities that were whites only, and that is potentially in the lifetime of some people that are watching this show right now. That's the reason why Washington State as a whole is 4.4% black, and it's a contributing factor, and why Kirkland only has a 1.4% black population. It's not the only reasons. There's a lot of more systemic racism reasons why, but it's part of the problem. And until we as a society stand back and own what has happened in this country going back to 1619, we are never going to move forward as a country.
David, you just highlighted the data that really is, I think shocking for some people when they don't realize it, because they come here and it's, we talk about this veil of progression and this veil of liberalism that we have here, but it's important to really highlight a lot of these issues. How is the coffee shop and those who were accosted there, how are they moving through this, and what are they doing to kind of heal from this? Because oftentimes acts of racism, just like this, can really cause trauma when you're just trying to be an amazing business owner in your community. What are they doing to kind of get through this and get past this?
Well, Taryn is angry because this was his wife who was accosted. What husband would not be angered by this? The wife doesn't want her name used, so she's been put in a state of fear on this. I'm going to read a quote here from Taryn out of our article. I feel my wife was targeted because she is a woman versus if I was in the stands. Why did he need to express his views so combatively and then steal from a business? What sense is there in, I don't like his views, so I'm going to steal from him? You can oppose Black Lives Matter, but why then steal from a business? She didn't even understand the point. She was appalled and surprised, but didn't understand what this has to do with him having a coffee. So they're just trying to move forward and run a business. But here we go. We're in Kirkland in 2021, and we have Black business owners. And I think in Kirkland, for visible Black business owners, you can literally count them on one hand with fingers left over in a retail or hospitality front, and they're afraid.
Yeah,
This is just
it's
wrong.
interesting, and you know, what I'm saying, I don't want to throw the whole city of Kirkland or anything under the bus, but you know, these guys get, you know, at one point, a lot of Seahawks lived in Kirkland, and you know, they get a different response than you know what I'm saying?
And Omari, you do bring up a good point, and this was one of the things that I had said earlier, is that Kirkland is on the east side of what we have seen from a political leadership. You have people like Nikhila Rice from Eastside Embrace, which has a high visibility over here, and the sit down and listen sessions that they do, which are very well attended. So if you compare it, say, to some of the things that have happened in Bothell and how they have attempted to address and the way they've dropped the ball multiple times over there on racism and policing, and I know that there is a controversial incident that happened, but there's other incidents. Kirkland is doing a lot of work, but it's not enough. There has to be more. And when you look at some of the surrounding East Side communities, there needs to be a lot more in those communities.
Right. And now, your thoughts on Chief Diaz's decision yesterday. Came about 5:00 yesterday to overturn Director Meyerberg's findings. And for people, I'll just give a quick intro here and let you answer questions. So David Malcontent was out there covering the protest literally from day one as well. And I know you guys were out there on June 1st. And what are your thoughts on Chief Diaz's decision?
Yeah, we weren't boots on the ground on June 1st. We were. I was still licking my wounds from May 30 on June 1st. My view is this: in some ways, I'm horrified, but in some ways, I'm not surprised. And Omari, I listened to the first half of your segment, and I'll give you a couple of examples. If we go back to June 6th, there was the IED candle, and there was the OPA investigation into the IED candle. And the conclusion was that that tweet was inappropriate and it should have never been sent. Full stop. The person that was ultimately investigated by OPA was just, I'm paraphrasing, following orders, and hence no consequences should happen to that person. But then the investigation stopped. There wasn't then the logical extension of, well, who told them to hit tweet? If that tweet should have never been sent out because it was false and untrue. And Omari, false and untrue, it's still sitting up on the Seattle Police Department's Twitter feed today. So you have that example. The other example is OPA case 0495. I don't have the full number. That case was dropped on April 30. And in that case, the OPA recommends an all-out ban on blast ball munitions, saying that they have concluded from the multiple complaints that there is no way that these devices can be used as a crowd control device in a safe manner that may not cause unintended injuries from people that shouldn't be injured. Full stop. Because the policy, the way it was written at the time, was, hey, it's a free fire zone. We can't do anything about this. The thing, like, this ties into the missing text, and I think you nailed it earlier. Why are we not getting the transparency? Why are we having to do these machinations and this dance of, well, you go to OPA. Well, OPA can't get an answer. So now if you want to get an answer, you're going to sue. But if you sue, I'm sorry, we deleted all those texts. So we don't actually have a record on that anymore. So we don't know. It's revolting, it's insulting, and I think it's an issue that regardless of your politics, you could be back the blue if that's who you are. You should be outraged by this. You should be outraged at the lack of oversight, the lack of transparency, and what appears to be a growing scandal that is across multiple agencies in a city to cover up what happened from June 21 to June 30.
Yeah.
All right, but
Wow.
before we let you go, David, please tell everybody how they can keep up with you and Malcontent News.
Yeah, the easiest way you can keep up with us is you can go to malcontentnews.com. We do 3 live shows a week at 8 p.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We'll have a live show tonight. Easiest way to find that is malcontentnews.tv.
All right.
Wow. Thanks so much, David. Always appreciate your insight.
Good stuff. And like I said, David, man, keep up the good work. You guys have been, man. I mean, this is I've seen your news show continue to grow, and I encourage people to support it and check you out. We also put the link to the article there in Kirkland in the comments. People can click on that, and I'm sure we'll be checking back in with you again real soon.
And Omari, Trey, thank you for having me on. Thank you for your support. Really appreciate it. I know that we are looking forward to, in about another 4 weeks, being able to go totally in studio. It's going to make our lives a lot easier. We're still doing remote connection as we're waiting for everybody to get their jabs. And go get a vaccine, please.
There it is. Talk to you soon, David.
Thanks, David.
All right. Thank you.
There's Malcontent. Yeah, the poll cam.
Yeah, that was poll cam guy. But you know what he really points out here, and he's so right. We've talked about this with the East Side. We've talked about this with other stories he's brought. Man, there's really still some work to be done to reconcile with the truth of what Washington State is about. Man, he laid out some great things there.
Yeah, man. All right, let's mix this up here real quick. A reminder that first of all, tomorrow we have Rod Long coming in. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting Friday tomorrow. But we have the Laugh Rehab. We're gonna put up the Laugh Rehab overlay. So Laugh Rehab, that's occurring on Saturday. And like I said, you've been there before. You've attended Laugh Rehab, and that's at the Rainier Arts Center. That's this Saturday, May 15th. Whole lot of good comedy coming on, and Rod Long will be joining us tomorrow. Then also tomorrow, man, we've been waiting to talk to the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle since February, since the murder of Anais Valencia at Urban League Village up there. We've been waiting to speak with them, and we're gonna have Michelle Merriweather, CEO of Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, will be joining us tomorrow. And I'm talking about a series of issues there. I mean, it's that building has basically been in the news for a while, but especially since February, and now the eviction of Omari Tahir and that group on Saturday of last week. So we're going to talk to Michelle Merriweather from the Urban League, and it'll be good to actually pose a lot of the questions that we've had and see what the Urban League is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been talking about it a lot. So tomorrow is going to shape up to be very interesting, y'all.
Very interesting. Hey, look, it looks like going into this show, I anticipated a very long and yeah. I mean, because at this point, it's like, man, I'm emotionally exhausted. I mean, emotionally, and like I said, we've kind of sat here sideline, we waited to see what's going to happen and everything else, and this is emotionally exhausting. This process here, and I mean, I hate to say it, man, we gotta stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Any last words before we get out of here, Trey?
Man, you guys, it's clear. It's time to really find ways to see yourself as a part of the solution. There are tons of campaigns that you can click a couple buttons and send some emails to your elected officials. There's also a ton of different organizations out there that you can bring your time, talent, and treasure into. Even if it's just an hour a week, it will be so beneficial to the work that's happening on the ground. It's clear. It's needed, though.
All right, good stuff. We're getting ready to get out of here, but don't forget that tonight is 7:00, and we didn't make a handcrafted motion graphic. We got to remind you, tonight at 7:00 is Clap Back Culture with Mike Davis of the South Seattle Emerald and Julia Jesse from right here in Converge Media, and I know they got a lot of stuff to talk about. So you can catch Clap Back Culture tonight at 7:00 anywhere where you're watching the Morning Update Show. And on that note, I want to remind you to go forward in your purpose and go forward in your humanity. And until tomorrow at 11 a.m., peace.
Lift every voice and
and sing till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rise.